We have with us Jamie Blackburn and Kelly Chapman. She's one of the scientists out there for iAdvantage. She's all, where are you now? Are you back at home or where are you?
Yep, in my home office.
In the home office, which is a miracle because a lot of times she's traveling some kind of motorized vehicle or trailer or something. She's out doing testing someplace. So we're glad that you're at home, and that so we'll get you cooking here. So the reason folks we're here, Jamie, tell us a little bit about iAdvantage. Tilt your camera down just a little bit. So
okay,
there you go. There we are.
Is that better? All right. So I'm from Cary, and even though I like to go to Ocracoke Island, it's about 6 hours commitment. So we're headquartered here in Cary, North Carolina. We've been around for almost 30 years, focusing on capture, management, and reporting of data. And that's very, very specialized scientific data. We were a company built by scientists for scientists. We support reporting and data collection for USDA, EPA, and FDA. And we're a small business and GSA schedule holder.
That's fantastic. And I've been down to your place and seen your software. It is pretty impressive, folks. If you don't know about iAdvantage yet, give them a shot. Maybe if you'd like, you can do that. We want to welcome all the folks. We have folks from a lot of folks from HHS, actually, DHS Education, VA, a lot of folks from VA, and people from USDA, because that's where a lot of your work is. And this will be the best briefing ever if I learn about data collection, the pitfalls to avoid. Eric, we're going to be on it for you. And Dane, the results are evident. Hopefully that is true. Christopher, I learned something new. Anything new, Jamie? It'll be the best briefing ever for Christopher. He learns something new.
All right.
And Steven says we get a few laughs while learning about the challenges and opportunities. Hopefully we can do that. We do like to keep it a little bit lighter for folks. Phyllis, I come away with improved data collection design. That is definitely going to happen. Am I right, Kelly? That's what we want.
Yes.
Improved data collection design, because if you do it right on the front end, what happens on the back end?
Get quality data.
It's good. And David says it's freaking brief. All right. So Alice says ideas are listened to and quality decisions are made. Always love that. Robert, I learned about process and ensure 100% data integrity. That's a big deal, isn't it, Jamie?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Patrick says I learned more about data resources that I can use in future residue studies. All right, then. And Philip, I learned the requirements of the best way to provide metadata. Metadata being what? What is metadata, Jamie?
Data about data.
Data about data. Compiling things. All right, please address the real-time platform and targeted audience to ensure a full scope of agency input. All right, we'll try that. Linda, how to determine when to collect data in an area where one or no samples have already been collected previously. So Linda's looking for like brand new studies, I guess. Rodney wants to talk about security. There's no problems with security. What's the deal, Rodney? I don't understand. Nobody's trying to get anything. Kevin, in the age of disinformation, misinformation, how do we mitigate relying on incorrect or misleading information? Wow. Oh man, a little bit of sideways there. Dane, current process reviews for efficiency. How do we improve current process without overburdening employees? Always a great idea. Cynthia, how do we access/use the iAdvantage products? Wow, Cynthia, we appreciate that softball question. From Sigging, I guess Sigging. I would like to have a video record send me since I'll be out of the office. Okay, you got that because we were recording this and you'll get that later today. Phyllis, what impact will new data collection designs have on program evaluations? Woo, man, a lot of great questions. If you have anything that will make this a great briefing for you, pop it in the Q&A or the chat, because we want to make sure that we can answer your questions, number one. Number two, that we address what's most important to you. And let's see, we'll talk about the agenda. Let's just make sure that everybody's got their information. You can always pop stuff into the chat and the Q&A. I don't see anything there. So we will be talking about, I already did a little bit of the introductions for Jamie and Kelly, but we'll get into what we're all about and the effective design of the framework, choosing the platform, using scientific methodology. That's what you are all about, right, Jamie? Is scientific methodology, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Go ahead.
We developed a product. By developing our product, we've learned that there are some basics that everyone should think about prior to whatever product it may be used. And so we're hoping to cover many of those today.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Yep. Hold on 1 second. I will just make sure I have these handouts are coming, I promise, in just a minute. But we're also going to talk about flexibility and integrity. Integrity is one of the things that somebody brought up in the questions, is making sure that the data maintains its integrity, right?
Right.
So we'll get to your Q&As, and you can pop in anytime you like. If you have a question, you can raise your hand. You can pop it in the Q&A, in the chat, whatever you like. Recommended action steps. We have procurement options as well as additional resources. I will have these momentarily for you. We're assembling them. You'll have a copy of the presentation as well as iAdvantage capabilities. As I mentioned, please, please, please pop stuff in the Q&A. We love that. Or raise your hand. We love the dialogue, and we have no problem opening it up. If you have something that you don't want everybody and their mother to see, you can send it to info@iAdvantagesoftware.com, and that'll be available all the way throughout the presentation, so that if there's something you have in particular that you don't want everybody to see, send it there. And you're not going to believe this, Jamie, but this is not endorsed by GSA or any agencies, provided to audience for informational purposes only. And this is what enables you guys to be able to participate from the government, because it's not an endorsement or commitment to purchase from any vendor. That's what GSA tells us to say. All right. So now, speaking of participation, why in the world did you decide to come here today? Is it that you're in the R&D and you have a current data collection need? Are you in management? You want your data to work? Are you tired? You can pick as many as you want, by the way. I'm tired of scrubbing bad data. Just about everybody's going to pick that, I think. Or some Weisenheimer can pick, my boss made me come. And have you ever been to a Gov Brief session before? If you haven't, welcome aboard. And if you have, welcome back. So as far as what you guys are all about, is there anything you want to throw out, Kelly, as just discussion points for folks here?
Well, first of all, of course, I have to say that we shoot for 75% plus participation on every poll. So please, everybody, give us an answer. If the boss really made you come, it's okay. Just click that answer and move on. But
That's
definitely, right. I want to say that based on the best briefing ever comments that you shared with us already, there should be a lot of good learning going on today, because we should be addressing many of those comments and questions that you alluded to in the previous slides, and just hope that everybody will get something advantageous to take away. I would say that keep an open mind, because this software was developed for unusual types of data, and it's very adaptable to most any type of data collection. So looking forward to helping everybody learn a little more today.
Love it. And if there's anything you would like to discuss, make sure you can raise your hand. We'll make sure we get you included, because there are challenges. A lot of that's on the front end. And that's what you mentioned, Kelly. The data collection process and the scientific process that you guys use, I think is really important. And it gives everybody the ability to collect good data on the front end, which it makes it usable, right, Jamie?
That's right.
And that's a big deal.
Usable from then on.
That's right. And to be able to be reused, which is another thing that a lot of folks like. So another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Any last stragglers? All right. We got 83% there, Kelly. Good. That was good.
You guys are winning.
You're winning. So there's folks that have the need. There's a lot of folks in management, a lot of folks tired, and one person, their boss made me come. I love it. Fantastic. So welcome to everybody again that has not been here before. A lot of folks haven't been here, but that's fantastic. So let's talk about the challenges, Jamie. There's a lot of challenges in collecting data. Why is that?
Sure. So in all these briefings and in all our discussions, we're learning a lot about what's going on. You know, everyone is in their own world, and we kind of have the advantage of looking from the outside in, so to speak. So the first thing is there's 4 filing cabinets worth of data every 15 minutes going up. And what that means is 463 exabytes of data each day. The key thing about an exabyte, just to give you a value to it, is if I think we all know what a gigabyte is. We tend to buy those drives now and get machines with a gigabyte, or even phones are getting there, are there. Well, if gigabyte was the size of the Earth, a exabyte would be the size of the sun. And so there's an exponential increase that's just going, and it's not ending, right? Everyone's talking about the same thing. And that's why we came up with this discussion, is to kind of take stock, step back and say, what are the things we could do as best practices to ensure that we don't end up just drinking from the fire hose? So it's a huge management issue, because there's data summation that occurs, derivation, manipulation. There's lack of security that, when things are changed. There's poor documentation around this for the reliability of data. In other words, we evolve it. Next thing you know, we go, well, where did that graph come from? Well, we're not sure. And it's because we're working so fast, we don't have that historical view of it. Poor documentation. We tend to get to it, right? We're all there to solve the problem, but we tend not to say how we got there. There's huge data integrity gaps between groups, between silos, all sorts of things. And it's tricky to convert all that data into valuable insights. And we all know AI is the hot topic all over. Well, it does require one thing, that you have good quality data. And growing data for businesses, it just won't scale if we don't step back at times and say, let's go back to best practices. Let's go back to rudimentary things that we need to do. And it needs to be in a timely, ongoing review access by all the stakeholders, from the ones who collect it, even the people entering it. There's sort of I guess you would say, a responsibility there all the way through.
Love it. And so this is always amazing me when we do this, because we know what the answer is going to be. We know what the number one answer is going to be. We're not going to tell you what the number one answer is. You're going to tell us the number one answer, but we already know what it is. So how do you collect or get your data right now? And there's so many folks still involved, even in that third one with paper, if you can imagine such a thing. But let us know. So spreadsheet, phone, email, paper, survey tool, professional survey contractor, SharePoint, or some other way. So we already know what it's going to be. Maybe we don't. Maybe we don't know what it's going to be, Jamie.
Let's see if you guys out in the audience can top the last poll and get more than 85%.
Look at Kelly.
And
doing great.
The agenda.
And please be honest, because we already know, we see information coming from across all the different agencies, and believe it or not, it's pretty similar no matter which function you work in. What we see as answers on this poll. So we're looking forward to hearing from everybody out there, if you'll take time to answer these two questions. And
it's turning out to be the same. It's turning out to be the same, Jamie.
It tends to fall into that. Yes.
Yep. But it's amazing how many folks still use paper too. It's wild. So while they're answering this, let's talk about what's happening to get. What do you mean by getting to the true value of data? What are we trying to do here?
Sure. So in our I guess you would say our rushed world, we tend to jump right away to the point where we start wanting to collect data, right? That's how we see it. It's not the process to get there. And the first thing I want to do is make sure you step back and you say, okay, so we're going to collect data. What are some of the things I need to think about as a steward of bringing this forth? And the first thing is that there's always someone responsible to design that data. It's really important that the responders are aware that they know. So you have to sit there and say, all right, what data do we need? Well, what do we need to collect? And think about what they're thinking about. Try to act as if you're them while you're putting this together. And when you're asking for data, the initial value of getting data is not only important and critical, and it has to be, as we say, usable and reusable, but it's also extremely expensive to ask people for data, especially if you have to ask them twice for the same type data because you didn't think it through. And the mistakes in data analysis can be expensive at the back end. So let's say you've collected something, but you need one value more. Well, guess what it costs? All those people to bring up their notebook or whatever, survey, what are some of the other ones, or even their spreadsheets, and
Yep.
go back to it. And chances are there's email involved and things like that. So the time that can be wasted or streamlined is up to you at this point. So when you get this task, your boss says, hey, we're going to do this. You got to take 2 steps back, as we say when you play center field in baseball. You take a step back first before you go step forward. And this is really important to make sure you understand the responsibility here.
I love it. So let's take a look at these results. So, and there's 2 questions here, so you got to scroll down a little bit. But spreadsheets, number 1, we knew that was going to be.
Absolutely.
And if you scroll down, does this process work? Yeah, it works great. Only 4%. Works, but it's clunky, 76%. And that's part of doing the right thing at the front end. Isn't that right, Jamie?
That's right.
Yep. And 8% said it totally sucks. I love it. That's fantastic. So that was how you collect the data. All right. So let's talk about how you manage your data, right? So one thing is to collect it. Now you got to manage it. And we're going to talk about one more, what you're going to do. So how do you manage your data? Well, this is communicate. Hold on a second. That's the wrong one. But you can answer that anyway. So we're going to communicate our data in a few minutes.
Okay.
I think we misinterpreted this particular one. Anyway, so how to communicate?
While everybody's working on that too, I would like to say though that just going back to Jamie's previous point, if you already are collecting data, when we talk about when you collect data, we're saying when you transition from whatever method you have currently to something like an electronic data management system, then there are many things to take into account to make sure that your data is the best it can be on the back end. So you really try to glean all the information you can from previous data collection methods and what your issues have been.
You're right. And Jennifer says spreadsheet is number 1, isn't it? Yes, Jennifer is right. Yep. She is correct. She sent that to us. I sent her the fact that she was right to everybody. How do you like that? All right. So if you're communicating, so one thing is to pull the information in, and you have to manage the data. Let's talk about that, Jamie. How do we manage data? Because it depends on the data, right? But if you have the data right from the beginning,
you have to think in its most simple format, not only how the data is going to be used for this particular collection, but how it can be reused by other data scientists, right? Most of these data collections, it's to be kept alive and be kept for reuse and comparison. So you want to keep your request for data very simple, because you got to think about that person who's probably busy with their own day and you've asked them to collect some data. They have to be sure of what your intent is to collect. Carefully design and consider and consult with an expert. It's really important. There's plenty of data scientists out there who understand data from the standpoint of its value, its length, how it can be reused, and even things like, things that are change in time and they're similar responses. It could mean exactly the same thing. We were talking some time ago about how it used to be shell shock for some people, and now it's PTSD and such. So you have to make sure that you include all those variations that mean exactly the same thing. And if you want that delineation between those, you have to make sure you only allow them to collect the data that you're asking for and not make up new data. Address was a classic case. We still can't get addresses just right, but it's a lot better since we all started accepting like Google and stuff like that, Google address. So you have to decide what to collect and how to protect it. It's really important. You already have to know its value long-term, and with all the compliance of things like names and such and personal information, it's even becoming much more important. You have to have a good platform, a platform that enables you to look at the data, its life cycle, how you're collecting it, its management, and even like being able to do campaigns. For instance, you want to wait till Monday morning for them to be able to do it. We also worry about things like the fact that a lot of people, scientists that are doing our data collection, aren't on a web network. So we have to worry about offline.
Right. And how do you manage that, by the way?
Well, we actually collect it, and we have to encrypt it and protect it and use all these basic capabilities. And then when they find a network, it goes hot and brings it back up. and it's always current, right? So that's one of the benefits of our product. A lot of people like survey tools. They're really good, but it's really hard to do some of these things, especially in a science world. You have to collect clean, verified data. There is no second try. And in fact, with our data collections, you can't go back yet to yesterday and do it for tomorrow a different way. It won't happen.
And a lot of times that's because of what you're doing, right? You do a lot of work with USDA, EPA, and you can't go back because it's actually like crop-based. A lot of things you do is crop-based.
That's right. That's right. And Kelly's going to talk a little bit about that in a while. But whenever you do something or change something, we actually have to record that on why you changed it. Why did you update that value? So we're very specific in the linear concept of collection.
And one of the best things I love about this, no matter what survey tool, whatever system, even if you use a spreadsheet, if you use these best practices, it'll still work better for you, right, Jamie?
That's right. That's right. And that's why the supposition of this whole presentation was, what are the things you should note, when you're grabbing the coffee, what do I have to concern myself with? What's my responsibility? That's all the positions we want you to think about, because it's real easy to think all I have to do is ask them these 4 questions until you realize that there's actually 16 questions.
So as you're designing it, let's talk about the categories. You mentioned it before. Defining the categories of data is probably one of the most important things that you can do, right?
That's right. That's right. So you have to always think about its longevity, and then things like, do you break the address up to its individual components? That's most prolific. Do you use acronyms? Do you use codes? How can you ensure that other people, because we're going to talk about it in a minute, but you have to worry about that data not only means something with that code today, it'll mean that same thing tomorrow.
And that it's referenceable, right? Because sometimes, believe it or not, folks, the government uses acronyms and they don't always mean the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. We all use, in fact, when we use an acronym from someone else, they look at you all quizzical, like, what are you talking about? Yeah.
And it's not just acronyms. Depending on what type of science you're in, we see it in agricultural and crop science that perhaps there's a scale. And one group, the scale goes from 0 to 9 and from bad to best. And some groups, it may be that 9 is worst and 0 is best. And so defining everything and making sure that it's consistent, how you collect the data and how many decimal places do you need each different piece of information collected to? What are the units that you're using? Do we need to be able to use multiple units? If so, if we collect it correctly, it's very easy then to but to convert the data from one, let's say from metric to standard units or vice versa. So all of this and thinking about it ahead of time means that what you get out of your system long-term is the best that it can be, versus just slapping something together and getting the data collected. And I want to make one other comment really quickly, and that is that I know that PFAS is a new hot topic. I know that we have somebody on here, it looks like from lead management. That's a hot topic right now. A lot of these things are in rural areas. And again, we're very accustomed to the fact of having to collect data into an electronic system when you don't have connectivity. And there are still so many places without that connectivity. So we've experienced all these different challenges in what we've done in the past. And Jamie, sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's fine.
No worries.
And the PFAS, that's forever chemicals. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, that's a huge issue across just about everywhere, with plastics and or other forever chemicals leaching into the drinking water, and it's a big deal. So if anybody has any questions about that, I'll be able to answer a little bit of it, not too much, but we did a briefing on that a couple of years ago. So one of the things I think that is really important is having those closed-ended responses. Why is that so important?
Sure. So you want to be able to not just leave the other column, right? Because the other could really constitute some real issues with data later on. So you want to ensure that you are explicit in what you're expecting as an answer. So as a scientist, we always test things, right? Scientists, and Kelly will probably support this. We test what we already know it's going to have as an outcome. It's the anomalies and such that are shocking and we're amazed by. And because of that, we want to make sure people aren't inventing new things, or at least not putting new things in that don't even fit the category at all. It's the whole concept of knowing what the right answer is, or at least the potential right answers, and not leaving it up to someone to say, of course they know. It's actually helps them. It makes them go faster and quicker through the collection process. Numeric codes versus character strings. There's a big decision there. Sometimes the numeric code is much more applicable to, for instance, like measuring, right? You don't want to say 3.6 for if you want to put for inches and then put 3.6 inches. It ends up making it tough for the data science who has to split this apart. Scrubbing, as we often think about, right? So if you left it to them to put whatever they want in, one guy puts 3.6 and they stay with that, but 10% would put 3.6 inches. Someone's going to have to clean that up later on. If data is really unknown, you have to figure out a way that is the right way to handle those anomalies. And if a data science is analyzing collected data, you have to focus on that raw data. And if there's a calculation to be done later, you want the raw data so the calculations can be applied different ways. Data science is proving one thing pretty factual, and that's one of the things that our product, for instance, works really hard on, which is several people look at our data over time, and several people will do different algorithms and so forth on the data, and they want it at its most basic format so they can decide how to collate it and put it together in some way that's useful. Then we're going to talk about considering metadata, right? Sooner or later, we're hearing more and more about really the principle of sharing the data. Well, it's really good to have a data value there, but it's really good to have what that data value means. What is its possible values or answers, things like that. And data science are really talking about this. I think we have a slide. We actually had a presentation that we showcased a gentleman, Emerson Hewitt, on showing the FAIR principles. And FAIR is all about sharing and keeping data out there for everyone to use, so that theoretically we're not all siloed collecting our data. Sometimes, how crazy is it? One user collects data and the same user is hit by a different group, person, whatever, and they're collecting similar data. That's got to be confusing to the person who's responsible for collecting it.
Yep. And funny you should mention FAIR, because boom, how do you like that? And then,
metadata is becoming much more important in at least knowing what it is, so that we know and we're not guessing. Or worst case yet, we've asked for something a year ago and we didn't realize what we asked for it again because I'm a new guy coming in and I asked for it again. Again, let's focus on the user. Let's think about what they're thinking on this. We should be augmenting the data, not always asking for the same thing if it's not important. Yeah. And FAIR is definitely a practice that's growing in science, certainly in the human health science area, of being able to share those things that can be shared. And it just improves life for all of us. And if you lead that to data science and then lead that to AI, we should see benefits from all of that.
And we also see some of the challenges with AI too.
Absolutely.
Yes. It's amazing when you type in something that says, give me this answer, and then all of a sudden it extrapolates something that's totally bogus.
I can't wait till we have Dave AI, Dave.ai.
Dave.ai.
Yeah, doing bad jokes and showing us stuff.
It's crazy.
Amy.ai.
And it's very expensive on the back end to clean up data. That's one of the biggest problems. If it's not reusable, that's what the whole FAIR thing. I love this, because when it becomes interoperable and reusable between agencies, and that's why these interagency briefings are so great, is because we get to be able to hear what the different agencies need and then how they can repurpose that exact same data if it's collected right.
If it's collected right and if it's sourced correctly. Because if you think about it, I think we saw on the major use of spreadsheets, and I'm sure those spreadsheets can also be Smartsheet and various products. But the fact of the matter is, I've not seen an Excel spreadsheet that gets beyond a few complexity levels that people don't either understand or they want to redo or somehow. So that's really a collection of data. And so it's very important that you know how important that the data source is. And that's why we keep ours in the cloud in a database so that people can form around it any way they want and use it in any way they want.
But the data is solid. Go ahead, Kelly. Sorry.
I just wanted to throw in also that as you think about metadata from a different perspective, the back end data, where data came from, who collected it, et cetera, is also very important if you move forward with modeling or trying to extrapolate data to a different use, or convert data from potentially from one group to another. So that metadata and all that is wrapped up in metadata and the FAIR principles really means that you have data that is much more usable long-term. And it's very important in that process.
Yep. And Melody was asking for the slides, and I just popped in the handouts, which includes the slides and your capes. So to your point,
right. This is where we feel like we've benefited in our tool, in our software. Because we're a science company, we've used the scientific method. And my premise here is, no matter which tool you're using, whether it's a spreadsheet, I think we saw some survey tools, it doesn't matter. You should use this same process, which is first define that problem and that data requirement and really spend the time there. You know, it's just like anything else, right? If you use bad design, you end up having an office that looks like Dave's kind of. It's put together. You design a process to answer the problem. You manage the process and the data collection, and then you manage and you review, communicate and report the data. Well, guess what? If you keep doing this correctly, you're going to end up with this kind of big asset called your data, right? It has a value. It costs you enough money, and now it's starting to build on its value, because if it saves you down the line, you really benefit. So we feel like the scientific methodology, as we've evolved the software, is the right way to go.
And you can, like you said, you can apply this to whatever methodology you're using. But if you don't do this right in the beginning, you're going to pay for it in the end, right?
Yeah. And we've seen bad science, right, Kelly? We've seen bad collections and we've seen all sorts of things. But the fact of the matter is, if you constantly question yourself on this, on how you're going to get there, you might find that spending the time right on the number one will actually save you not only time, but also kind of quality at the end.
Absolutely. So we start with the methodology, scientific methodology, then we get into the design of a component. Then we'll talk about collecting in a minute. But design is where you're applying the methodology, right?
That's right. You're doing the whiteboard work, right? You're sitting around talking with your experts and you want to maximize that creativity, minimize those repetitive tasks. Is there anything worse when we're asked the same thing 4 different ways, 4 different times, right? Unless they're really trying to figure out if we're on straight up and true. It's designed by scientists for scientists. So we know the scientific methodology and we know the processes needed in the various science areas. So that part is actually one of our big benefits on our product. Quickly create studies along with all the supporting study information, the test articles, the treatments, the test systems. You want to think through it all together in a single way. So you can even put in things like protocol information into your questions and such. Security of data and protection of intellectual property. We've been dealing with this for years. Collecting data is done for important reasons. And when it comes to efficacy, especially, that becomes IP. And that's IP that you have to absolutely be sure to protect. And that's one of the reasons we sit in the cloud and we sit in the various areas of front-ending with the major players, with, in our case, Microsoft Azure and Oracle cloud infrastructure.
Right on. So once you get there, now you have the design. You don't collect anything until you get the design right. But that doesn't mean you can't go back later, right? You can always add something to it.
Well, you put that into your design. You anticipate the need to maybe do some updates. And we built our product around that because it sometimes happens. And we actually ask the questions, or we have audibility built in, so they have to say, it was me who made that change. In this case, you want uniform and consistent data collection, because chances are if you ask it today, you're going to ask it again. If it's that purposeful, it's a good choice that you're going to go down this process. This is where life gets a little bit easier, but this is actually where people jump to right away. They start building their spreadsheet or building their survey, but they haven't done the hard part up front. And so you want this to be just continuous and repeatable. You want to do it for almost any geography. You want to be able to do it for almost any mindset that's in different labs. You want online and offline modes. These are suggestions we include, because for us, this is important, because in a lot of cases, our collections are done throughout the country, which doesn't always have the best internet access. No. But we also want it secure and compliant so that they are kept protected on the iPad or so forth, or on their PC. And then APIs for import export. More and more now, people want to think about the data differently than you could ever imagine with your reporting structure and how you organize maybe your Excel spreadsheet, how we organize our reporting structures. So we offer an API for people to think in their own way. And this is actually becoming a lot more prolific. I can tell you on any given day, we have thousands, if not more, of customers hitting our API to get their data in a different way, in a different look, because it's important to them. Let's face it, smart people love to try to do new things in smart, better ways, right? Cheaper, better, faster. That's every right. Day. So
every day. And I think the flexibility of it is where you guys understand, because you've been doing this for a long time. And that's why I think it's
20 plus years, right?
As you start to, so now we collect it, then we manage it, and now we got to communicate it. How do you communicate your collected data? That's the question. So how do you do that? You do it with emails, spreadsheets, raw data. Some people have to have the raw data. Some have the executive communication, dashboards, paper reports. Somebody's going to have to click that. And review meetings, all these, it may be all of the above too, right, Jamie? Because
that's right. It's
not necessarily
probably the most tangible part of the whole process, right? We tend to think of this, and it tends to be that Friday afternoon when we're about to go home and we've got the last collections in, or we're waiting on the last person to email us. And now we have to put it all together for first thing for Monday, because we want to show to someone, or someone's expecting it.
Yep.
So it's actually where the rubber hits the road. It's the fourth quarter. This is where everyone kind of gets, well, this is where you get a cup of coffee and close the office door.
Or if you're drinking from home, you don't have to limit it to coffee. Depends on how bad the date is.
I'm still shocked by that coffee cup that you had before. Oh boy.
Oh, this the Idaho one?
Yeah.
So
well, for all of you participating today, don't forget, we want to beat that 85% participation here. And
thank you.
We actually really enjoy collecting this type of data as we have these presentations, simply because you are the boots on the ground, the real world of what's happening out there. And it's very important for us to make sure we maintain a good understanding of that, and that our work addresses your needs. And so we look forward to seeing what everybody has to say here.
Are you telling me that data collection, compilation, and communication is important in these briefings too, Jay?
Yeah.
Kelly? Right. All right. So this gets to the point where we're reporting the data. So we're waiting for everybody to get up to that 80% room.
Sure.
Let's talk about the reporting.
Sure. So these last few slides, right? The premise of this, no matter what tool you're using, if you were to be on the verge of buying a tool, selecting a tool, trying to ask what tools you use, these are the functions they should do. And so in reporting, it's quite clear. First of all, you have to be able to create templates. I shouldn't come up and be creative every time I do a similar report, especially week after week, right? There's no time. We have to create the template, create it quickly, and we shouldn't need tons of IT experience to do so. The reports generated at the project, study, or site level, and you should be able to select how to reorganize them or organize your report. And they should be in user-defined and industry standards, things that you understand and the person who's expected to report understands. In some cases, some agencies require a certain type format. They should stay in that format. We shouldn't deviate, nor should we invent new ways. They should contain all the the variable possibilities of text, tables, images, and so forth. GPS coordinates, all that type of stuff should be inclusive. Published formats can be edited at any time. Oftentimes, you will have to maybe make an adjustment. So you should be able to treat it like a report and put in those variants that you might have, the variances. But you also should be able to import it from other management systems, other places. You're going to want the careful integration of being able to keep open, but also keep it cheaper, better, faster.
Yep. And I'm going to share this out before we go to the next slide, because two things. First of all, if you're number one, executive communication and dashboards and KPIs, key performance indicators, for those of you who are not familiar with that, are the top. And if you scroll down a little bit, it's on me to make the data make sense is the number one there. So that's really great. I appreciate you guys doing that. And Kelly, great job smacking people around, telling them they have to meet those goals. Love it. And Susan had to leave. See you, Susan. You're probably seeing this now in the recording. And she says she's going to review it. So we have the workflow summary here. You're talking about, tell us about what you guys like to see here.
Sure. It's the stop, drop, and roll of our world. You design, you spend the right amount of time in your design, you collect it, you do your reports, and then you repeat. And it should be all repeatable. You shouldn't have to go back to very much. It should be just keeping improving and improving over time.
Yep.
So we feel like if you stay focused on those major functions, you'll be successful with your data.
And let's talk about the fundamentals here, because this is where we get the rubber hit the road.
So this is more of a, if you were doing a RFI type of, what should my product, how should I have a product that does this for me? We think that cloud-based is the way to go. It offers the most future. We don't even know if we've hit, 99% of its true capabilities yet. It's 100% web-based. That means that wherever you're at, you can be able to use it. It's scalable. In other words, your tool, whatever you may use, doesn't work just for you. It can work for a lot of people, and even in a congruent way that they all can kind of work together. It allows for data exchange and integration. I don't know if anyone can just say, this is my data anymore, especially when you're asking other people to input it. It's all our data. It's 100% compliant with the various, like GXP in our case, 21 CFR part. It's a constant engagement to keep these things going on. Immediate access for all results. So the bad news is when you get data collection, we used to have kind of a request would go out and we'd wait. I don't know. We'd wait a week. I don't know, and you get email back. Now we want to know. So if we plan on Monday to start collecting data and people get their electronic notebooks, we expect somewhere at noon to give an update of progress. We might be asked in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon meeting, how's that going? And we want to know about that. So all the stakeholders need to know how it's going, even though it's in mid position.
And isn't it important to do that, though? Because if there's something not quite right, then you can make adjustments too.
That's right. If you see something's not, you might have a new idea for a data collection and find out that it's not working correctly at all. So you might have to do the worst case where you have to go out and ask for it to be redone, or better yet, you might be able to adjust it in some way with good, methodology. Like in GLP, we have to follow a pretty stringent role. So there's plenty of ways to do that, but it's always good to be aware. And there's nothing better than when you really have success. Your polls, Kelly's proving it. She's proving how much in science we care about what's going on, that people enter in their thoughts. And in this case, we know right away from your survey.
And for those of us that aren't scientists and we're collecting data, it could be for HR, it could be for some other purpose. If you treat it as a science, though, it really improves your outcomes, I think. Don't you think?
That's right. And in all of these things, when I'm giving you these, what things should do in selecting the right tool or product, it's important to know that it's all in the end about getting good quality data and not having lots of redundant data and having information about that data. So when I win the lottery tonight, is the lottery tonight? When I win that lottery, the guy tomorrow behind me knows what I did.
It was I think it was last night. It was a drawing. And it was over 900 million.
I want to just step in. I've been trying to wait for the right time, but I think it's important that everybody, no matter what you are collecting, or whether you're science or humanities or whatever your product is, it's basically the fact too that as we talk about this, we know that, as Jamie said, there are individuals and people would like to report it different ways. They might like to collect it different ways. But at the end of the day, what we have learned in data science is that we have to come to some agreement. Otherwise, you wind up with these databases where your data cannot be pulled together. And then it becomes less valuable. It also means there's more scrubbing that has to be done. So as we talk about this, we're really saying that, you know, you have to come to a team decision or across team decisions to say, this is what we're going to collect and this is how we're going to collect it. But you also design it in a way so that in 12 months from now, that same team can come back together and say, okay, well, we can tweak this and make it better. And you've left yourself a door open in order to do that so that you're not boxed into a corner somewhere. So that upfront thought process and communication and working together is all as important as which type of format or method you use to collect it. So I'll step right in quickly. I know we're running out of time to utilizing the scientific method here. And this slide is really more about the fact that what we are accustomed to is where lots of information comes in from different sources. It's what you see on the left side. It could be an analytical lab. It could be a field site. It could be a greenhouse, all different types of data. Some of it's biological. Some of it is abiotic data. And then all of that comes into the platform that we use called eStudy. And once in that platform, all that data is in the same place. We don't have one electronic notebook for the analytical lab and one for the biological sites and so forth. And in that one platform, then we have the capability to pull it together into reports that can go out to whoever that report needs to go to. And it can be multiple reports. We take the data and then we have templates where we can have one template for EPA, one for USDA, one for QA. And whatever data they need is in their report, but they don't have to see everybody else's information or the information that's not pertinent to what they need to know. So basically, this eStudy platform allows us to take data from lots of sources. It can look very different in terms of what that data is, but to pull it together and then to be able to utilize templates that can be used over and over so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel or redo it by hand every time. And at the push of a button, we can have the reports that are needed for each of the different clients that information needs to go to. So this is an overview of when we talk about this through all these slides, this is what we're accustomed to doing. And it is very different really from having, let's say, a different spreadsheet or a different workbook for every one of those different pieces that are funneling information into a project of some type.
So let's talk about how this is being used now.
Sure. So in our world, right as we're speaking right now in our cloud service for our platform, there's 445 projects, right? It's growing monthly at 3%. Studies, there's 1,648. Now, this is an amazing number in the fact that there's people out there throughout, in some cases, right, Kelly? I'm not sure if South America right now is performing, but they're continuing the buildup of data. And in all cases, as I was saying earlier, there's also people collecting it through such, say, APIs or doing standard reporting through our product from this data all the time. And so what's the most amazing figure to me is 32,000 variables. We contend that there's probably lots of savings, but in our case, we actually have companies who define a variable of similarity differently. And
right
so, you know, in that case, we're not here to judge science on how they use it, especially at a company or an agency.
And what I love about what you were saying, Kelly, is when you take this, all these can apply. It doesn't matter which one you have, right? It doesn't matter whether you're doing a project, a study, or a trial. It's just a matter of how the system's set up. Is that right?
That's correct. And the system is agnostic to what the data is. That's why we keep saying it doesn't matter If
Yeah.
you're doing tracking lead and lead-based paint, if you're looking for forever chemicals, if you're looking at aquatics, health of aquatic species, it doesn't matter. Any type of data can be used in the system.
That's right.
Love it, love it, love it. All right, we're going to get you guys out of here in just a minute. We have at least one question, but if you would like to continue the conversation, there's opportunities to do this in many different ways. One, you can schedule a time with the team, with your team and the iAdvantage team. They can address something specific for you. You want to be part of a pilot within your organization to use a tool like iAdvantage. You want to join the next briefing? You want to be a speaker for the next briefing? We love that, don't we, Jamie?
Absolutely.
And whether you have a requirement for collection of data. All right, so we are going to pop into the Q&A or the chat, doesn't much matter. We're paying attention to both. Linda says, is there a greater risk if it's all stored in one place? What security is there? Great question, Linda.
That's right. That's right. So we've actually have kind of a built-in security besides the fact of normal security of things like logins and controls. So we actually have a way, because in some cases, we have a person doing it for a sponsor, doing a test and also doing the test for another sponsor. So we actually have to get down to a pretty low point of making sure that we protect the IP of these sponsors. So we don't feel like the cloud takes away. We actually think it adds, because now you have these huge companies which really are becoming incredible. I mean, they're being challenged every day, and they're learning much more than we could at a company if we were running our own.
I think to put it in a different context, since Jamie's a software designer and I'm not, it's just to say that there are many checks and balances, and there are divisions and parsing of different data that belongs to different people and so forth. And then, of course, you have all the normal password protection and permission protection. And so there are lots of things we didn't talk about today that are there for security.
Yep. And Rodney was asking about that earlier as well, Linda. So you're in good hands, in good company with that. Anybody else got anything? I know that we were talking about, let's see, how to determine when to collect data in an area where no one or samples have ever been collected previously. That's part of the setup. Is that right?
That's right. Part of the design.
Yep. And what impact will the new data collection designs have on new program evaluations? That's great, Phyllis, because that gets us the next question. You don't know. A lot of times you don't even know what the impact is until you know what the next data collection requirement will be. But you can always design it right. Is that right, Jamie?
That's right. And the one thing that, our goal is to make sure that our data collected is quality. It is 100%, because there's smart people making those type decisions with, as Kelly was talking about, modeling and such before.
Yep.
They need that data to be true so that they can make the right decisions. We're not here to show you how to do that part. Data science is, an exponential growth area. But they do love our quality of data that we keep.
Because it's right when it comes in, right? That's
right.
The whole idea. And that's the deal. For session takeaways for you guys, the platform that we're talking about here was built to take advantage of the scientific methodology. It doesn't matter if whatever platform you decide to use, make sure you implement scientific methodology, because guess what? The good design gets good data, which means you can use it over and over again, and you don't have to deal with bad data. Isn't that right, Jamie?
That's right. That's right. It'll just keep growing bad.
Yep. And we want to get you guys out of here on time. So earlier I said you don't have to purchase from any particular vendor, but if you want to, you can, because guess what? iAdvantage has a GSA contract and they're a small business, so you can help check off some of those boxes for your procurement folks. If they would like that, you will get a recap email. You'll have the fundamentals for today, but you'll also get one later this week or early next week, which will include the recording and a link to the video, as well as a one-on-one meeting if you'd like to continue this with your team. And we just want to say thanks for joining us, both you guys as agencies and agency folks that have to deal with collecting data. And I really appreciate Jamie and you, Kelly, because you always come with great ideas for being able to make this stuff work.
Very good. Thank you so much.
You got
Thanks
it.
to everybody for being here.
Yeah, it was good. I really appreciate you guys. Go ahead, have a great rest of the week, and we'll get you guys out of here on time.
All right. Good
All
deal.
right, guys. See you later.